just then, if you're doing 12-step program, I'd just say, or whatever you're doing, just don't leave before the miracle happens. I mean, myself, I like everything immediate. I like it to be on my time, but fortunately, that's not the way our world works. So, just write a list of all the things you like to do when you're sober, when you're clean, people you care about, because if you're an addict, you're an alcoholic like me, you will, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere down the line, you'll lose all that stuff again.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of TSP, the SHAIR Podcast. And on today's episode, we have my good friend Chris Wright joining us. Now, Chris currently lives in Hartford, Connecticut, but we met here in Costa Rica when Chris was interned in the Costa Rica Recovery Rehab Center. And to celebrate his first year clean in sobriety, Chris is joining us on the SHAIR Podcast today. His story is textbook drug addiction, narcissism, and another cautionary tale of drunken debauchery, where if it wasn't for Chris's dog Jordan, he may not be with us today. And now, with 1 year clean and sober, Chris is living a life beyond his wildest dreams. Again, he lives in Hartford, Connecticut, in a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. Chris is part of a fast-growing movement towards sustainable living with organic, truly farm-grown fruits, vegetables, and animals. I'm proud to call him a friend. I'm proud to share his story. So let's dive right in. But first, a little SHAIR Podcast news. Okay, guys, another quick reminder that I will be at the Seattle International Narcotics Anonymous Convention this year, July 29th, 30th, and 31st, 2016. It will be held at the Seattle Airport Marriott, and I will be the main speaker on Friday night opening up the convention. If you go to the SHAIR Podcast website, on the right-hand side of the website, you'll see a banner. It's a blue banner that says SINAC 2016. Click on that banner. It'll send you to the page where you have information about room rates, about registering for the convention. Everything you need to know about attending the convention is right on that website. So again, I would love to meet you guys in person. If you can make it out there, would love to see you. Okay, guys, first of all, thanks so much for everyone who has helped support the SHAIR Podcast. And for those of you listening who would like to know how you can help support the SHAIR Podcast, let me give you a couple of ideas. First of all, the most important one, which is absolutely free, is to leave a rating and review on iTunes. iTunes single-handedly is one of the most powerful ways for people to find the SHAIR Podcast. So to make it easy for you guys, what I've done is I've put buttons on the website, www.theshairpodcast.com. Go there on the right-hand side. The very first button reads, subscribe on iTunes. Click on that button. It's going to send you directly to the iTunes podcast app. And from there, you'll click subscribe and then go to the section that says rate and review. And please leave us a 5-star rating. There's no question about it. iTunes is one of the best ways for our listeners to find the SHAIR Podcast, especially when they're searching for it on Google. If you don't have an iPhone, then go to Stitcher Radio. It's the banner right underneath the subscribe on iTunes. Click on that and do the exact same thing. Subscribe and then leave a 5-star rating and review. There's no question about it. This is the best way for you to show your support. I also want to thank all the listeners who have been clicking on the Amazon banner ad. Folks, for those of you wondering what's another fantastic way to support the show is by clicking on that banner before you shop on Amazon. You're going to shop on Amazon anyway. It's not going to cost you 1 penny more, and it kicks back some commission to the SHAIR Podcast. We've already seen a dramatic increase in commission since we added the banner ad. So thanks again, guys. It's helping so much. And as far as being of service, you can also go to the website and click on the Join the Facebook Private Group banner. It'll take you right to the Facebook private group where you can request to be added and do some service. There's newcomers in there that are posting daily, old-timers sharing experience, strength, and hope. It's an absolutely beautiful way to contribute to your own recovery as well as to those in the community. So plug yourself in, get into that private Facebook group. It's absolutely thriving. And again, it's a wonderful way for everyone to be of service. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to all of the listeners who have continued to give donations every month. Thank you guys so much for your generous donations. And for those of you that would like to contribute and help grow and support the SHAIR Podcast financially, you can go to the website, click on the Donate with PayPal button, and it'll take you to the page where you can make your donation. And for those of you that use Sober Grid or are looking for an app on their phone where you can find meetings, have a sobriety calculator, connect privately with members of your local recovery community, or when you travel, connect with members in recovery in order to find a meeting, then you might as well join the private alumni group for SHAIR Podcast listeners. So go into the Sober Grid menu once you've registered. Scroll down to where it says Alumni Group, click on Add Group, and type in SHAIR, and the SHAIR Podcast Alumni Group will pop right up. And finally, I want to give credit to the SHAIR Podcast team that is instrumental in producing the SHAIR Podcast, Zinzi Gugu and Evelyn E., who handle the audio editing for each podcast episode, Omar Hernandez, that does all the social media cover art, and Krista Wojo, who handles all of our social media marketing. Without this amazing team, there's no way I could have continued to produce the podcast every week. Thank you guys. I couldn't do this without you. So now a quick message from our sponsor and on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Omar, how's it going?
Dude, it's going fantastic, man. It's great to hear your voice, brother.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited. So, folks, today we have Chris Wright joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. He's a good friend of mine. We met in Costa Rica when he was at Costa Rica Recovery in rehab. And now Chris has recently celebrated 1 year clean and sober. And the plan was 6 months ago that on his bucket list was at 1 year he's going to be on the SHAIR Podcast. And here we are. This is cool.
Yeah, I think, we talked about it. You told me about some other guy that you were in contact with about that. And I said, I don't know, it sounded like a good goal. Keeping people off the streets, you know?
That's the goal, man. That's the goal. Whatever it takes, dude. Seriously.
Whatever keeps you clean.
Expect a miracle. All right. So I have had an opportunity to hear a little bit of your story, and it's heavy, man. I know that your parents have been pulling for you, and I'm sure reconnecting with them has been a blessing. So I want to hear all about that kind of stuff. So Let's dive into your story. But first, let's talk about what you are doing today. Take us into your normal daily routine, including recovery.
All right. I try to center myself as much as I can in the morning. I'm very much kind of I guess once I'm off, it's like a cup of coffee and go kind of person. So it's important to me. And I don't know, some people get down on their knees and pray or whatever. Whenever I'm conscious of it, I'll just take a moment. Pretty much what I do is I ask a higher power for strength just to kind of do their will. And and then I kind of move forward with my day. Now, right now I'm working full time Monday through Friday, so I do that. I'm an organic biodynamic farmer, so I do pretty labor intensive work, and usually come home exhausted. I have a dog who's like pretty much my child, and I hike, walk with him, even though I'm exhausted every day. Eat something, put something in my body, and I usually hit a night meeting. Right now, I'm trying to do like 3 nights a week, which is good for me, and then I hit both weekends whenever possible. It's been a kind of a transitional phase. I wasn't, and you'll hear more about it, but I wasn't working full time through a large majority of my first year, which was kind of a blessing. I was able to, I hit well over 365 meetings in my first year, which I think was quite pivotal.
Yep.
Yeah, I just kind of had to hear the same things until they clicked.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, that's what that means. Yeah.
No, that's exactly how it works. So now tell us a little bit, because we were talking a little bit about this new gig. And since I'm totally now into this whole organic movement, save the planet kind of a deal. All right. A big fan of Rich Roll, who is also a recovering alcoholic, a vegan, a triathlon athlete, is just a badass. So now I've quit eating red meat and chicken and dairy. So tell us about this job and what you're doing, because it actually, it's very exciting to me.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm working on a small local farm. It's actually within the area, and it's called community supported agriculture. A CSA essentially is mainly how this farm makes money. People within the community or around the state I live in will essentially purchase or make an investment. They'll pay X amount of dollars, like I think it's either 400, 500, or 700, depending on how much produce you want to receive on a weekly basis. And throughout the months of June through October, you come to the farm once a week. You get to you can see where your produce is coming from, meet the farmers that are slaving over these things, and essentially you get a quantity, a certain, whatever you pay for, certain amount of pounds of produce you can take from our farm and bring home each week. So everything that we do is totally organic. So we don't use any pesticides. It's all natural. We fertilize with a lot of fish oils and stuff, and everything is done by hand. Today we were picking rocks out of a field and cutting down a bunch of vines, which a can of Roundup would have been real good for, but it's not, that's not what it's about. But it's been great. Actually at the interview, I think one of the farmers said, farming is really about something greater than yourself. And that wasn't a God shot then. I don't know what it is. So it's been a good match. It's rewarding work to see the fruits of your labor and see other people enjoy it, and know where your next meal is coming from, exactly where it came from. So
where is this located?
This is in Salem, Connecticut, which is very close to me. It's just up the road, actually. So I got a nice little 4-minute commute. So I just, again, it was totally by chance. I was actually spending an absurd amount of money on organic produce myself and researching CSAs for myself to essentially purchase and get my produce from. And I just happened to see that they were hiring their 2016 crew, and myself having no background in that, just kind of took a shot in the dark, and it's been a good match thus far.
Dude, that's HP, baby. That's totally HP, man.
When your eyes are open.
And CSA, what does that stand for again?
Community supported agriculture. Dude,
I love it. I think my wife, when she hears this interview, she's going to say, we're moving to Connecticut. But that's where I'm moving towards. That's what I want to be. I want to be able to go and see, how my produce is growing, and for my own eyes that they're not using pesticides. It's totally organic, and just get back to what it was like, even 200 years ago, when it was actually farming?
Yeah, it wasn't all mass produced. It's it's pretty cool to see where it's all coming from, and there's a lot that you can do with it. And we raise our own cattle for slaughter, so you know where your meat's coming from. You get your eggs, and nutrition, diet, and exercise has been pretty pivotal in my recovery. So although the pay is not, I had to just kind of let that be for now, but because a farmer's not rolling up in a Rolls Royce.
No.
But there's something to be said for that, and it's I think I'm much happier than I was in my last line of work.
Now, do you get all working there? You get a salary, but do you also get to participate or partake in the produce at a discounted price?
Yeah, I can take up to 15 pounds of vegetables a week, which is, believe it or not, we go through it. And I could take that, eggs, and a certain allotment of the beef, because it is kind of rationed. And
I'm sure
we always got to make sure our community is served before we if there's a new crop in, it tends to be popular. We'll have to wait till the following week, but yeah, we definitely reap the benefits of our own work.
This is so cool, man. I absolutely love it. I'm actually jealous. I'm not,
you wouldn't have been today.
Well, the thing is, when I was a kid growing up, my dad used to make me do all the yard work. So I'd have to go out there and pick the weeds and dig around, and I just hated it. And I swore I would never do yard work ever again. Like when I was an adult, my job would not be outdoors. I was going to be an office person. And I've been an office person for 20 some odd years. And now it's like, man, how wonderful would it be to just stick my hand in the earth, right? Like, I don't know about moving boulders and getting rid of weeds and all that shit. But just being out and, what it was like before the Industrial Revolution, before McDonald's, before high fructose corn syrup came into the picture. Like, what was life like when you could just go out there and just eat from the land, and you knew that you were going to get all the nutrients you needed? That's pretty insane. So
pretty cool feeling. It's it's definitely tough to. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to go through with that in this day and age.
Oh yeah, no question.
The farmers that run it are very cool people, and pretty admirable. It's a very healthy environment.
No, I dig it. All right, man. Well, let's start talking about some drug addiction.
All right.
So, how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
My anniversary date is March 9th of 2015, so I'm coming up on a couple days here in 13 months.
Yeah. Outstanding.
13.
Dude, that's awesome. And tell us, Chris, how old you were the first time you drank and used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
I think I had to be 14 or 15 years old, first time I drank or drugged. I just remember, the feeling of, all right, like, this is it. Like, this is what I needed, and how can I get more?
Yeah.
and I was kind of just chasing that feeling for the next 14, 15 years.
Wow, that's wild, dude. That's 14, 15 years. And you're so young. How old are you now?
Everyone says that, but I'm 29. I just turned 29. Next year will be the dirty 30. So,
okay. Yeah. You definitely look like you're in your mid-20s max.
Everyone's, I still get ID to movies and stuff. I don't know. It must have, it was the crack. It's my secret.
That's the secret weapon, huh? Yeah, wow. There's a first for everything, huh?
I noticed, like, us addicts, we have, we do kind of have, like, a resiliency to us, so.
There's no question about it. All right, buddy, you're warmed up, Chris. So it's time for me to turn this show over to you, man. It's time for you to tell us the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So, Chris, take it away.
Great. All right, so I'm going to try to kind of share, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I grew up in a middle class household. My mother was an immigrant from Eastern Europe, from Czechoslovakia, and my father's side of the family was European. I was the product of an alcoholic household. My father struggled with alcoholism and met my mother, and they were in Texas. And kind of, the story that I get is that, he had his own demons. And I'm a middle child. I have an older brother, younger sister. So she was with child with my older brother, and basically kind of said, like, you need to get your act together or taking the kid. At that point, shaped up, joined a 12-step group, and was stone sober for about the next, 20 years. I don't think I saw my father drink until I had actually gotten into college or in high school. He was, he participated in the program, but I think later just kind of did it on his own.
Right.
And it's not his story, my story, but there's some background. So we grew up in New Britain, Connecticut, which is this they call it Little Poland. It's a huge place for immigrants from Eastern Europe. So I was brought up Russian Orthodox, which is best way I could describe it is if you've seen like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That was like my church service every Sunday, 2 hours.
I love that movie, man.
Yeah, lots of gold incense that would choke you up. Russian ladies, and they would give you candy. So I went. My mother would take us every weekend, and that's more so. I think it was what her father did and her mother did, and it was kind of a tradition. And it was important to my grandfather, that we went. So we continued to go, and that was like my first impression of religion was why does everyone else get to go to this 45-minute mass? And like, here I am 2 hours and I don't even speak this language. And everyone thinks I'm super weird. So we grew up there for a while, and it was kind of a rough neighborhood. At some point there was like there was a stabbing and a shooting within the same week in front of the complex that we lived in. And at that point, parents made a decision that although probably above their means, they decided to move out, and we moved to the boonies, like the woods. They told us there wouldn't be any convenience stores, any 7-Elevens, etc., and they weren't lying. Like we literally moved to the woods. So that's where my childhood kind of began. I think I was like 4 years old at the time, and I moved right before kindergarten. But it was interesting. A couple of my most influential friends they grew up in the same town back in Little Poland with me, and without speaking to each other. And obviously, kindergartners can't plot these things together. But we just unknowingly all moved to the same town together. And one day we were at a playscape. Hey, what are you doing here? And so it was very crazy, but it's cool. And these are still friends I've been able to maintain today. So maybe that was higher power working in my life. So we moved to East Adam, which is the sticks. I start my grade school there. I think I entered the first grade, probably to my own doing. I wasn't that close with my brother. He kind of, I don't know, he always kind of saw me as trying to best him and, being annoying. So we never really, for only being 2-3 years apart, we never really had a great connection. So we continued to grow up in this town. I met a lot of good friends. I had a core central group of friends, but when I got to high school, I went to a different high school. The high school in town was not that great, and I was looking around at a bunch of them, and there was one I could afford. It was a Catholic high school about 45 minutes away. So that's where I ended up enrolling for high school. So that kind of took me away from, everyone that I kind of knew in this small town growing up. Just to backtrack a little, I guess, in middle school and in grade school, I was identified. I was put into this TAG program, which sounds ridiculous, and it stands for talented and gifted. And, kind of just they have these things. And, it kind of just like put little Chris on his pedestal, and he's walking around like, I own this fucking town, and like, look at me, and what, I'd win the awards. School was never challenging for me throughout grade school and middle school, and kind of as I just described with my brother, like, I learned that I could try half-heartedly and get exceptional results, and like, this was great. So long as I was bringing home the grades, then that was like the family's indication that, everything was okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how they monitored it. And, as I matured, as I grew up, I kind of used that and stretched that to my advantage more so and more so. I also got involved in soccer very early. I became very good at soccer, allowed me to travel. I was in the Olympic development program. Just lots of things feeding my ego and people telling me that I'm this and that and a bag of chips. But, I was a big fish in a small pond. And anyways, so moving along, I go to high school. I go to this place called Xavier, and it's a Catholic kind of like preparatory school. And that's like, the whole wear ties, you can't have your hair a certain length, etc., which all things I kind of struggle with. Like, why does God care if I have long hair? Like, I like asking questions like that.
Right.
Or, God said I didn't have to wear a tie today. Like, it's all good. So instead of, in lieu of detention, they had these things called jugs, which stand for, I'm not making this stuff up, but it stands for justice under God. And I used to get sent to there, and then, like, I kept getting, don't you see the irony in this?
Dude.
Just under God, God's gonna, he's gonna punish me however he wants to. But
terrible.
Yeah. So we sat in a room and like stared at a wall for 30 minutes, and this was my justice under God. This kind of just kind of fortified that wall I was putting up that I had begun to have against faith and religion at an early age. Earlier because it was different and it was just so excessive, and like the long services and a language I didn't really, get the gist of. And then now it was, the things that scared me were like, I'd be this kid sitting behind me would be cheating off my Spanish exam. And then he'd just be like sitting up, sitting down, taking the blood of Christ. Like, do you even know what you're doing or saying right now? It scared me. It all felt very cultish when I would like be at the student masses, and more so just they only allowed like 5% non-Catholic denomination into the school. That was actually a question they could ask. I just kind of like, again, just kind of fed my ego. Like, I'm different and y'all are drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm not having any of it. So, I just, I grew away from faith. I grew away from religion. I continued in soccer and to excel in high school. Again, just kind of trying half-heartedly. They got me into tougher classes, the quote-unquote honors program. Still, I never really challenged myself because I just figured, if I'm bringing home A's, then because of that, again, that was kind of the progress report back home, and everything was good. So in high school, freshman year, I think is when I had first drugs. I think so. My buddy went to prep school again. He got to go to one of the prep schools I got into, but I couldn't afford. So he comes home from prep school with like a mason jar full of rum or something. And we were all sleeping over at my buddy's house and got this mason jar full of rum. Nasty. I'm not much of a rum drinker, but whatever. So we're passing it around, and I just remember tasting it and not liking it, but I want to get drunk. I want to feel this. And I'm pretty sure I puked my brains out that night. And that didn't deter me. I just like the next week, and it's like, can we get more? Shortly thereafterwards, within, I'd say a month, I was seeking a way to find pot. And sure enough, I found it. I went to some like birthday party where a band was playing. I was like, well, bands always have pot, right? And I'd go talk to the bass player after like a set break, and sure enough, there we go. So I started smoking weed, like a lot of weed in high school. So again, grades are good. Everything looks okay. But yeah, I become like a habitual weed smoker. I'm getting more and more into soccer. I'm into the party scene. I love the party scene. Every weekend essentially is let's go get wasted. Let's go to a party.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
still remember the first party I was at. It's like a scene out of Dazed and Confused. It was in the woods somewhere. There was a big bonfire. All the freshmen and the senior. You're feeling like you're all right. I've made it in the world, and definitely like a Matthew McConaughey hanging out. I was like a little freshman dude, and I remember just thinking, wow, what a wild night, and driving back in the morning. And I don't know, I think we had all these blankets with us because it was cold, and we had this bizarre, like, well, if we take these blankets home, we're going to get caught. So we're like throwing blankets out of the window, like driving home in the morning. But it's a very, it's a vivid memory in my mind. So again, kind of party scene, I chased that for a while. Kept partying through high school, and college was coming up. Like, that's what you have to do. And I never really learned how to try because everything was just coming so easily to me, and I took it for granted. So like college, you have to fill out applications for and shit. And I was like, no, they're gonna come for me. And I was being recruited for soccer, and about a handful of schools. So again, I didn't have to like apply to college. I was brought on recruiting trips and paid to go out, visit university, stay the weekend,
Nice.
see if I like it. And like, and of course, every time I went there, I was like, let's go get fucked up.
Yep.
Like, let's drink and let's drug. And at this time, again, it was, weed and alcohol. And this was in my junior year. And so I'm going on these trips, and I remember actually one of them was a college in Canada, and the Canadian drinking age is 18. So it was I never forget, the coach was like, we're going to go out and have a beer after this. And I was like, yes, like sign me up. This is the one. Like, I know where I want to go to school. I didn't have going there, but I remember having those thoughts in my head, like, yeah, I can drink it as an 18-year-old, like priorities taken care of. So anyways, continuing on, like I did ridiculous things. Like I got into the music festival scene like my junior year, and I somehow like convinced my parents, because my grades were good and I was doing okay. Like I could take a week off of school and go to some music festival in Tennessee as a junior in high school with my friend. And we like drove out there and went to it. And there I got into like hallucinogenics and psychedelics. So I was doing a lot of like mushrooms and LSD for the first time there. And then I found ways to get it when I came back home. I remember that festival was just a drug festival. It wasn't, I enjoyed a lot of the music, but it was all like, let's get messed up and then go listen to music.
Oh yeah.
And on that, I remember the third day we were camping next to these kids from Penn State. Everyone just being so befuddled that two 17-year-olds are at this festival by themselves. Like, who let you come here by yourselves? And so we were camping next to a bunch of college seniors, and they started drinking at like 9 in the morning one day. And I think they filled a watermelon full of tequila. We're just eating this watermelon, having a grand old time. Like, life was great. 10 in the morning, and it's like 95 degrees in the Tennessee sun. And I remember getting so sick, and I passed out. And I missed a whole day of shows, and they came back like 8 hours later. And I looked like the Wicked Witch of the West. Like my legs were just, like where her legs are pinned into the house. I was just like halfway in my tent, and that's all I had moved in 8 hours. I got burns. I swore off tequila. I said I'd never drink tequila again. That didn't happen, but yeah, all those lovely feelings. I wasn't learning anything. So I go through senior year. No, I'm doing a lot, again, party scene, drinking. I actually found, I began to find people that would deal marijuana in heavier quantities, I guess is a good way to politically correct way of saying it. And, and I would kind of purchase larger quantities and sell bits and pieces to kind of break even, if that makes any sense. I wouldn't say I was a drug dealer, but I was willing to share.
Is it like a recreational drug provider?
Yeah, I guess that. Somebody shared a meeting one time. It was my friend also gave away drugs for money. It's like, well, that's just the best thing ever I've ever heard. So,
It's a fucking T-shirt.
Yeah, I also give away drugs for money. So, not a drug dealer. So I'm doing like all these things in the party scene, and so college is on the horizon. Grades are still good. Senior year, I just like didn't give a shit. Like I put in my work. I felt like the dues had been paid, so I started slacking off, admittedly. And then I got a scholarship and an opportunity to go to New York University, NYU, and play soccer and get like one of the best educations in the country. So again, I thought that was pretty cool, and I didn't really have to do much to get it. So I said, sure, let's do this. And I had been on my trip to the Big Apple, and I didn't know much about New York City, actually, as confident as I was, and as much as I could lead you on to think I did. But so I was kind of like getting into something I really didn't know too much about. But how could I pass up an opportunity to go live in New York City as an 18-year-old?
Oh yeah.
So I signed up for that. So I start NYU immediately, because anyone that has ever lived in New York City thinks because you have lived in New York City, you're better than everyone. So I totally add this to my ego and kind of walk around. I'm a college athlete living in New York City. I'm going to school. What's up? What do you do? Like, so that's kind of like, I would say that's my air of arrogance.
Well, in your defense, I've never met one New Yorker that didn't think he was the shit.
Yeah. I wasn't even native. I was naturalized New Yorker. But it's just, that is the way. That's absolutely. It's like the persona you got to carry around. So I fell right into that. I wasn't brought in thinking I was going to start on the soccer team, but there was an injury. I got a couple games in, and then all of a sudden I was a starter. So, I remember walking around Manhattan and like walking around blocks, and just random people on the sidewalk. You just know who you are, and again, that just fed my ego. And so college went along, and my first year, I actually did okay. Like I was on the dean's list. I wasn't really messing around. I would get obliterated from Thursday to Sunday, so I could take care of my school shit.
Yeah.
But Thursday through Sunday, I'd get obliterated. And during the season, I would say that year I was pretty disciplined, because I was trying to kind of break into the squad and still taking it seriously at that time. And so, for about 3 months of the year, or 4 months of the year, I was, all right, well, I'll just drink occasionally. I'd cut off marijuana due to drug testing and any other drugs for that nature, because I was worried I'd get a drug test, which could happen. So anyways, we have a fairly successful first season. I go through my first year, and I get A's, and start thinking about what we're doing in the summer. Originally, I was going to stay in New York, but like a friend called me, and she's like, this is one of the friends that I mentioned earlier that like was born where I was born and then moved to where I moved without talking to each other. So she's like, my friend Jade, she's like, we're thinking about going to Martha's Vineyard for the summer. And I was like, oh yeah, like what's going on there? And she's like, I don't know. I just heard it's like the place to be if you're a college kid. So I was like, all right, this sounds good. And it sounds like a party all summer. Yep. I'm in. I remember in one day, I like took a train from New York to my house in Connecticut, got a car, drove to Massachusetts to Cape Cod, took a bus to a ferry, got on a ferry, found a job at this restaurant, took the ferry back, took the car, got on a train, went to New York, and then I got fucked up that night. I just like remember I had to get back to the city so I could go out because it was like a Saturday night.
Impressive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we're pretty determined people,
right?
If we have an objective in mind, yes, we're like absolutely. So I secured this job in this restaurant, and I started cooking, and cooking like I had always been doing it. I have pictures of myself when I was 4 years old with like a chef's hat on, apron, etc. And it was a passion. My father managed a restaurant, so it ran in the family, and so I did that for the summer. And that summer I just, I kind of went out of control. There was a guy around who had mushrooms a lot. So I was eating a lot of mushrooms. We would just have this bucket that lied on our coffee table with, like the bottom of a milk carton, cut off, which turns into a gravity bong. And it would just sit on the coffee table. And like, we'd casually just like bong in a beer, it was ridiculous. Like, but we were having the summer of our lives.
Yeah.
Being reckless. How I didn't get a DUI or kill myself that summer is just ridiculous. That was summer. I was still underage. I had a fake ID. I got a fake ID in the city, so I'd like buy things and I'd buy all the beer, and I thought I was the cool guy, and I could buy beer for girls. And girls were definitely coming into the picture. Again, I didn't really have any trouble finding girls. It was just like I couldn't maintain a relationship. Like, it's been a story of my life. But so lots of girls that summer, lots of drugs. We just partied like rock stars. I met my future sister-in-law, so my brother's wife. My brother and I, again, weren't that close, but he like didn't tell me. So he didn't really mention how like into this relationship he was with this girl. And he's like, we're coming over for the summer, like to Connecticut. We'd like to see you for a day. And so they come up to the vineyard. They take the ferry over. And at the same time, my friend Jade is like playing this massive party. And it's a small island. So word gets around quick. And this just like turned into a crazy party. There was just hundreds and hundreds of people in our little rental log cabin.
Nice.
And I know it was, and a lot of crazy things going on, like drug use everywhere and drinking, and it made my brother very uncomfortable. And I had said he could sleep in my room and stuff, and obviously that was off the table because there was people, not even myself, in there. I don't even know where I slept, but anyways, they like ended up sleeping on the deck that night. And long story short, a couple of years later, or a year later, like, I was going to visit them in Florida. He told me this story now when I was sober. He's like, when you came to visit that first time, because they had just gotten engaged, she was like, can we leave him alone? And like, at first I was like, that's hilarious. Like, that's so funny. And now I kind of get it. Like I was a train wreck, and I just didn't see it. I was just so yeah. That was how I met my sister-in-law. So,
man,
yeah. I didn't know. I didn't get much of a heads up, but so that's that summer. Everything. I'm drinking at work. That starts. It's I'm stealing bottles of wine and champagne mimosas throughout the day. Restaurants are pretty good for drug addicts and alcoholics. I remember my first job was was washing dishes, and I was like 15, and they kept all disappearing at certain times during the night. They would say staff meeting. Finally, I'm like, what the fuck is this staff meeting? And everyone just went in the walk-in fridge and smoking a blunt. So I was like, oh, these are my people. Yes. So I was attracted to that. Like, even, with a good education going, and probably where I should have been doing like career-oriented internships and whatnot, I was like, well, I want to be like, I want to go in this industry because it's all, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mosey along doing that. I go to my sophomore year. I'm coming home with a lot of cash. I'm going back to New York, rather, with a lot of cash. So I'm not home at all that summer. I go to Martha's Vineyard. I'm like a day at home, and then I'm right back in the city for preseason. And I have a lot of cash saved up because I don't know how I did that, but I did it. I worked a lot. I worked like 14 hours days, but I was drunk half the time and high. So,
dude, you were making tips though, right?
No, I was working in the kitchen, but it was like a very good paycheck, and I found like lots of odds and ends, and I could do a whole podcast on that summer.
Okay, I got you.
But I'll spare you the details. So go back sophomore year, start preseason, and I get introduced to cocaine, and I really like it. And within like a couple months, I'm like severely addicted to cocaine, and I was able to kind of garner up the self-will to stop that. And it was because of the soccer team. The soccer team was doing really well. We were having a historic year. Went to the NCAA Final Four. I was kind of the poster child that year. So I was like, shit, like I have to stop this, because if I get a drug test and I fail it, like I can't let my team down. So I was actually able on my own will to stop. And that carried on until we went to the Final Four and the season was over. And then I went right back to cocaine. And throughout this, my grades started actually suffering. Like I was not able to just do what Chris did and get A's. There was like work and really smart people all around me. I was starting to realize that I was this small fish in a big pond now. That scared me because I never had to ask for help. So this was all new to me. So, I reacted by continuing to use cocaine, habitually smoke marijuana, just keep going along. The whole time, I'm like, got this facade that everything's good. We're having this awesome year with soccer. I'm leading the team, the country. I was second team All-American that year, and secretly I'm just dying inside. I'm like withdrawing from classes. I get to my second semester. I think I failed another class, and of course, like they're like, a lot of people reached out and they're like, you should take a semester off, like get yourself together, yada yada. You should come home for the summer. I know what's best. I'm going to stay in New York this summer. I'm going to do a summer session. That way, like, I can get back on track to graduate with all my friends, and nobody's going to know what's going on.
No.
So like, this is like what I'm conjuring up. That summer, I worked at a restaurant in New York. I was bartending, and like New York, you can go to a bar 24 hours a day. It's pretty awesome. And, I got super into cocaine. I was just doing a lot of coke, a lot of drinking that summer. I passed my summer courses at the detriment that I was progressing in my illness and my addiction. So I didn't go home. I didn't get grounded with, people that cared about me and loved me. And I keep going, and I go to my junior year. My junior year, I was just like full-blown addict. Couldn't stop. Like, whereas I got into the soccer season and I knew I needed to stop because drug testing, I was just like, well, fuck it. Like, if it happens, it happens. And, I'd fake injuries. I, kind of half be there. And I dropped a couple courses, and, I didn't have that great of a season. Everything was suffering. And, again, suggestions to take a time out, go get some help, etc. I was like, no, like, because if I did something, like I'm going to have that question, like, what's going on? Like, well, where are you? So I just pressed on. In my end of junior year, end of my fall semester, they tell me that I'm on academic probation, which essentially means that I need to hit a certain GPA or they're going to dismiss me, essentially. I knew I was walking the plank. So I continued on into my spring semester, and I didn't even give it a go. I just wasn't attending classes. I wasn't doing anything. I was just partying and then sleeping off the partying is the best way I can describe it. And I'm not really telling anyone what's going on. my parents kind of found out because they heard about that, and they were surprised because I never talked to them because, I just kind of internalized everything. So needless to say, I do get academically dismissed after my junior semester, and I wouldn't even tell my folks what's going on until like the paper came in the mail. It was like I had to wait for this like certified mail package to come before I would say, "Oh yes, this actually, yeah, that did happen." It was like,
Oh man,
yeah, it was like, the reality of the situation didn't set in until like that happened. That was a big moment for me that like I never truly recovered from, because that was a situation where I couldn't do something and I needed help and I had failed at something, and it was just like all these things were very new to me, and I was in disarray for sure, like what happened. And I had lots of false pride and remorse and shamefulness that, I would drop all my friends that I had in university, all these people that genuinely cared about me and were just asking how I was doing and am I okay? Because I didn't show up for my senior year and I didn't tell anyone. And my response to that was to run away and just like fall off the earth, because like I can't tell you what's going on. It's nothing good to talk about.
Right.
So I was just continuing to hide it, and I lost a lot of friends because of that, because I just couldn't face my own failures. So I try to like regroup. My parents say they'll let me live at home if I go to therapy. And so I go to therapy and I give that a try. And I walk in there with a lot of preconceptions and not being open-mindedness. I'm like, yeah, I smoke a joint here and there. Occasionally I'll have a beer. And then I get pissed because this guy's not helping me. And I'm not really giving him the opportunity to. And I'm not really telling him half the truth. And they try to put me on antidepressants, and they up the dosage, and I don't really feel it's working. So I just stopped taking it, and never really gave that a chance. And kind of just like, all right, well, I'm not doing this anymore, but I'm still living here. And the agreement was not an agreement after a very short period of time. So I need to work. I start working. Again, I go back to the restaurant field. I'll start working this job, bartending, serving, etc. And I'm drinking a lot. Like, I would do doubles, and I'd have a double shift. So I'd like work from 11 to 1:30 or 2, and then come back in like at 3:30 and then work till close. And I would go out to like another bar or restaurant nearby, and I'd go like have 4 shots and then smoke a joint and then go back to work. And like I thought this was like cool, and we were just partying. And it occurs to me now that is like clear alcoholic. Like people don't go and show up to work drunk, but I was able to perform very well in the job. I was making a lot of money, cash in hand at the end of the night. I was into whatever drugs I could get my hand on, but during this time period, I got really into ecstasy and LSD. I would say just about every night for the next year and a half, I would go straight from work. I'd continue drinking at the bar, but I'd go like pick up some E from the dealer first, and I'd drop E. I'd go to the bar, and then I'd drive home. So after about 8 months of doing this or whatever, inevitably I get in a car accident at 3 a.m, total the car, call the cops, etc. I'm claiming, the go-to alcoholic alibi from where I'm from is that a deer was in front of me, and I swerved, and I didn't hit the deer. I was like, I was a wreck. I was crying and just a wreck, and I had to call my mother to come pick me up, and I think the officer said something like, "I think you learned your lesson tonight," because they asked if I was drinking, and I said, "Yeah, just a beer," which is always a lie. But and I didn't learn my lesson, because 3 months later, doing the same shit, and I'm about a mile from my house at like 3:30 in the morning, flying on E, drunk, and a tree runs into my car, and
was that the story?
I like to describe it as such.
Oh my God.
But honestly, I'm like lucky that this one I should have been, I don't know, more hurt than I was, but I hit a pretty big tree. You know, the seatbelt keeps me in, and got a big bruise from the seatbelt. And I remember like having my bowl, my marijuana bowl, and I was like throwing it in the woods, and like, God damn it, like this is it. Like I can't do this anymore, and I'm done with this. And I just left the car there at 3:30 in the morning, put the hazard lights on. It's just like wrapped around a tree. I somehow just walked out of there, and I walk about 2 miles to my parents' house, and I wake them up, and I'm like, I got in an accident, and they're like, and they knew, they're like, my father kept saying like, what are you on? Like, you haven't just been drinking, like you're on something. And it was the E, because my jaw was probably shaking uncontrollably.
Yep.
And, it's just like, well, it's like, you can't just like walk away from an accident. Like, you know, that's a crime. Like, we're calling the cops. They called the cops. I called AAA to get the car towed. And again, just by some sort of fate, the cops never showed up, and the AAA showed up, and they towed it without the cops being there. And I walked away, like no repercussions of what I had done that night, no DUI, etc. So now they say, if you're going to keep going here, if you're going to keep living here, you have to go back to therapy. Right. So I give it a go, and I tried some antidepressants. They had me on like Wellbutrin or something, and I'm telling half the truth, so they didn't really have much of a shot to help me again. And I take the Wellbutrin, I get an allergic reaction to it, and I'm like, again, not for me, not doing this. And I keep kind of going along, and now I'm unemployed, because I say, basically, I'm like, now, like, kind of like how I thought getting out of New York would get me better. Like, I was like, well, now I clearly the problem is the restaurant industry and the nightlife. Like, that is clearly the problem here. So I'm going to get out of that. So I quit my job, and now I'm just kind of like bumming it. Like, you know, I have some money and just like left over, but I'm not working. I think I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to go back to school. So I enroll in one of the state universities, and like, oh, you know, I kind of half tried that. There were some classes I liked, and the ones I didn't, I just didn't show up to. So it didn't go well. You know, I was just getting high all the time still. I was smoking weed. Like I said, I never would. And I was still, you know, drinking. I'd cut the E out because I thought that was a problem. And essentially, I'm not working. I'm going to school. It's been a few months now. And I find like somebody who has more drugs, and I want them, and it's a good connection. And what I start doing is I start stealing. Like my parents had like given me their debit account one night to go get a pizza, and I just took note of the numbers, and then at night I would grab a card, go out to the ATM, try to take inconspicuous sums of money. And about a few months later, they like sat me down. They're like, is this you? Or, because if not, we're gonna tell them to launch an investigation. And it hadn't occurred to me that there are video cameras at every ATM. Yeah. So, you know, they talk about in the AA book about being cornered in Bill's story. Like, I felt so cornered there. I was like, I can't, like, and I couldn't lie my way out of this. Like, you know, I could lie my way out of anything. That's what I did. I manipulated people. So, you know, I think I said no at first, and then they said the thing about the ATM. So I was like, oh, like, yeah. And I remember, like, my mom was crying. My father, I'd never seen him cry before, but he was. And he's like, you gotta get your shit and get out of here. So I packed up my car. I lived in my car for like a week in some commuter lot, and it was miserable. And I remember I found some like odd job, like catering or something. Again, I went back to the restaurant industry, and I tried to get that job, and I finally kind of let go of my false pride and told a couple friends, really good people, that have been kicked out of the house and like I need a place to stay, and they let me go stay in their spare room for the summer without paying and stuff. So I kind of get together and things were good, and I was around really healthy people and it was going okay. And, you know, I was just drinking and smoking pot. And finally I gathered up enough money. I found another friend within this like group that was looking for a place to live, and we rented a house together. At this point, I kind of get in like one of the more serious relationships I was in with this girl, Laura, and we start dating and seeing each other. And she's a musician and she's a bartender and likes to drink. And she doesn't, you know, like do drugs like I do. But at that time, I was like, you know, I was back to drinking and smoking weed, and I thought everything was going okay. And I got a job at Hartford Financial, and it was like, you know, a real salaried position. I was getting really great benefits, etc. Like things were like looking good. And then about 2 months into this job, something new happens in my life. She breaks up with me, and the girl never broke up with me before. So again, like me not knowing how to handle rejection or failure, like I was like totally taken aback, because it was the one time where, you know, I kind of called it the fizzle. I would be with a girl for a while, and then I kind of just like lose interest and fall off the planet. And I thought it was like cool, but it was just because I was so full of bullshit that I was like making up so many lies about myself that at some point, like it was gonna kind of self implode on itself, and I had to get out of there. So I did the one thing I knew how to do, which was run.
Yeah.
But with this girl, it was different. So she breaks up with me, and that's like green light to go nuts. And I think what I did was I went on Craigslist, and I discreetly like made posts to find a drug dealer.
What?
Yeah. So I found my coke dealer on Craigslist, and I swear to God, if he answered the post, and I sent him an email, and we met up, and I started doing coke again. And from there, I was doing it every single weekend because I had this job. So I was like, oh, I'll drink and, you know, smoke weed throughout the week. And I was just doing the coke all the time. And, you know, that weared on my relationship with my roommate. You know, that lasted about a year, and we were good friends. And, you know, he didn't drink, he didn't drugs, you know, so I always hid this from people. Didn't know. I didn't participate. Like I'd get a couple grams of coke and I'd lock myself in my bedroom and do the coke. Like that was the fun part of it. And
of course, it always was.
Yeah. You know, come up with plans how I'm going to save the world tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, that's how I use drugs. You know, the E was a little different. I went the club, the party scene, and a lot of girls and whatnot. But, you know, the coke, I hid because I thought it was dirty, and like, you know, I didn't want to share it with the people around me. So I do that. I move into another place. That's still going on. I don't know. I'm just like super depressed. So I start using prostitutes. And so I don't know, like where that even came from. It was more so, you know, when I think about it, it was like because I was hiding all the drug use from people, and
Yes.
I couldn't be myself. I was like looking for somebody I can. All right, well, you know, this is what I was looking for, co-signers, kind of, to get myself around and be like, oh, well, I can use drugs and we can hang out. I know, all right, sweet, but I have to pay you for your time. So I started doing that, and you know, drugs are heavily involved, and you know, this is a weekly thing. I'm like a weekend warrior at this point, and it's bleeding more and more into the weekdays. And there was just one night, I was saying like 2013, that couldn't get any more coke that night. You know, we'd stay up just dialing the dealer time and time again, just like, you know, it'd just be like I'd be up all weekend, and we couldn't get it, but we could get crack cocaine. So And I'd seen it. I'd seen heroin and all that stuff. And for whatever reason, up until that point, I hadn't done it. But I was like, I want to try it. And like that, I got addicted to crack cocaine. So in place of the coke, it was always, can I get crack? And, I smoked a lot of crack and continued to patronize the women. I lost a lot of friends. The people I was living with, I would start I just do things I shouldn't do, like borrow their car when they're out of town. And I do ridiculous things like drive to Boston to go pick up drugs and stupid things. But I was using and using and using more. Like I couldn't get enough of the crack. Like I got paid bi-weekly, and I remember on that Friday, on that payday, like my hands it'd be like 9 a.m. and they'd be balmy and sweaty just because I knew I was going to go get off like right after work. And sure enough, like that's exactly where I went, and I would do that. So through the midst of this all, I get a dog. He's this like lab pit bull. Joy of my life right now. His name is Jordan. Probably saved my life. But I get this dog, and I'm thinking like he's also gonna like save me again. Like I'm gonna be a great dog owner. I'm an animal lover. Like I can't deny the innocence of animals. They don't have a voice for themselves. But the drugs, like all honesty, they made me kind of a shitty owner. But I
kind of.
Yeah. I mean, he got fed. Like I would feed my dog before I fed myself, no doubt, and I'd make sure he get the best food. But and he'd be so happy to eat it every single day. And he would lift my spirits. Even like he loved me when I couldn't love myself, for sure. But I just like physically, I was just a wreck. Like alcohol and drugs take a huge toll on your body. I'd gotten away from being super healthy and doing all these running activities and just wasn't doing anything. I was very sedentary, I would say. And, the job was in a cubicle. I was making really good money. And they kept promoting me. Like again, it was back to like kind of the old Chris where I was doing half work and like excelling and winning all these awards and promoting. And I was with the company for 4 or 5 years, and they just kept promoting me. I think within the 4 or 5 years, I got 4 or 5 promotions. And I'll never forget, like the last year, my coworkers voted me best known by his coworkers. I would just giggle to myself because, like, you guys don't even know. Like, you don't know what I do. Like, I'm dying of death on the inside. And
oh man,
just like this. I'm a crack addict at this point. And, everything's going on. I was around a lot of heroin use too. And like, that scared me. I always thought I was like gonna be the one driving somebody who nodded off and hit their head on the toilet or something to the accident. So there's many times I wondered if I even have fun while I was doing it because I became so paranoid while I was strung out on crack. Needless to say, I tried heroin. I didn't prick myself, but I snorted it a few times. For whatever reason, that never stuck. I threw up. I was lethargic. I couldn't get up. I think the thing was I couldn't like actually physically get up to take care of my dog. Where on the crack, I was like good to go. I could still walk around and be strung out.
Lots of energy.
So, yeah. So like I just did it and didn't do that, but I kept on with it. About a year before my ultimate bottom, I used to go to my parents too. Like throughout these 4 or 5 years of me keeping this job and all the places to live and getting the dog, etc. Like they think like. All right, he finally got it together. So we used to go over there, take like an hour and a half drive over to their house on weekends. We'd have dinner and catch up. I'd bring the dog there, etc. And this one particular weekend, there was just a crack pipe in my car. Like my father went to go move it.
Oh man!
And he finds it, and like right then and there, they're like, "You need to like get help." Like. I'm like, no, it's fine. It was just a one-time thing. Like, it's like, friends, like, like what kind of friends smoke crack? Who tries crack once? Nobody. All these ridiculous things.
Dude, seriously.
Yeah, and they're just like pleading with me to get to rehab. And I'm just like, well, of course I can't, and I had like full great benefits. I would have paid for it and insurance. And they're like, and I'm just like, if I go, like, hey, what am I going to say if I'm gone for 28 days? Like, just holding on, guarding that. I was guarding that ego, like, like a pit bull. I just wouldn't let it go. I thought that I had the world fooled. And a lot of people I did have fooled just because I didn't let you in. If you got to a certain point, you got too close, just like all those girls in these relationships I had, then you got let go. And I ghosted. Like, that's just how it had to be at this point. Because the only people I would really hang around with drug use were the prostitutes. And I ended up, so towards the end here, I'm wasting all my money on this, and I'm still trying to keep a roof on my head, and et cetera. And, I started like driving around these girls for drugs. So I would do that, and I'd be able to like maintain my addiction without having to pay for more than I could afford. And, I would use more and more dealers. I remember I'd take my dog with me in the car when I would meet a new dealer and stuff, because like he'd like protect me. And, some shady situations, like south end of Hartford all the time. Remember gunshots going off, and like rather than getting out of there, just like staying and smoking the crack, and like insane situations. It was just getting more and more insane, and I just couldn't stop. And I would just say, I'm gonna stop, and I can't do this, and I have to pay this bill. And it's this out of body experience. I just blinked my eyes, and there I would be again. And things were just very fastly closing in on me. And, the last year was just a terrible year. I should have taken the advice, but it just kept going down and down. And towards the end, I'm still doing okay in work, but like, I don't know, I just like couldn't muster the courage to get up one day. And I just was like, I'm just going to stay home. And we had just gotten our assessments at work. These people were going to give me a $10,000 bonus which got paid out in like 6 weeks. And I'm just thinking, I just got like, my eyes are watering, because I know like I'm going to go on the run of my life here. But I just stay home. And I stayed home for 4 consecutive weeks without calling my boss or picking up, dodging phone calls, etc. I just ghosted my work. And I knew I was going to be fired. Again, it was like the dismissal from school. I just waited for that letter to come. Those 4 weeks, it was just consistent using. I'd get out like 3 times a day just to let my dog out. But I was towards the end, I thought people were coming after me. I was looking out the blinds all the time, and I was a train wreck. I didn't want to see anyone. So I'd lost my job at this point, and I wasn't talking to anyone, wasn't taking any phone calls for a while now. So my dad finally tracks me down, finds out where I am, and I'm musing, and he just knocks on the door, and he's like, we just wanted to make sure you were alive. Your mother hasn't slept in a couple months. For me, that was about as good as a gun to my head. And he was like breaking down, and it was like I went to go spew the bullshit. I just couldn't do it that time. I would just didn't have anything to say. And he left, and I was there, and I went on for about another 2 weeks. And I finally just said, I texted my mother. I said, I need help. I can't do this anymore. And I think I'm bipolar, or something's going on here. I wasn't sure what an addict or an alcoholic was at that point in time, but I just said I needed help. And a God shot. So I'm looking at the Huffington Post that night, and there's an article. It's low-cost treatment alternatives. Americans are seeking addictions and alcoholic treatment overseas. And lo and behold, I'm reading this article, and there's a little blurb about Costa Rica Recovery. And I had lost my job. So in the States, when you lose your job, you lose your insurance. So I had no insurance. Luckily, what I did have over the 4 or 5 years is I had a 401k, a retirement savings. And as a 28-year-old, I emptied that out and got enough money where I can't plug Costa Rica Recovery enough. They definitely saved my life. But, for what I could get for 3 months of treatment in Costa Rica, it was like I couldn't even get a month in the States without insurance.
Right.
With insurance, maybe a month. It was unreal. So, that's, kind of my higher power working in my life. And I was able to go to this treatment center. And, the allure of Costa Rica got me a little bit too, I think.
Yeah.
I was hesitant. I was like, oh, beaches. And
Costa Rica's the shit.
Yeah. I'm going to, Pura Vida. I'm going to go on this like little vacation to a foreign country. Exactly what I need to change my life. And, that's not what it was. San Jose is beautiful, but, it's no like.
There's no beaches in San Jose, man.
Yeah, there's no resort over there. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the country's, very dear to my heart. And I'm not trying to downplay it, but it was not what I was conjuring up in my head, getting to the facility. I remember, the last 2 weeks, my parents, I put everything in storage that like, come stay with us because they thought I was going to run, not do this. But I paid for it and got it all set up and I got there. And I remember the guy who picked me up to go to rehab and he's like, so what do you do? What's your poison? And I'm just like so fucking offended. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do I do? Like, and here I am going to a drug rehab facility, still trying to like be on my guard. And I was like, yeah, I have, I drink a little, like I smoke a little weed, etc. And then 30 minutes later, we did a urine test, and like there it is. Like, it says here you do crack cocaine and maybe some other things. I think I was like taking my dog's medication at that time too. He got
dude.
Tramadol or something for his
wow.
Yeah, thunderstorms and woof. Yep, I stole my dog's medication. That's pretty fucking sick. I remember telling my counselor that, and he's like, I can't say I've heard that before. So I go there thinking I'm going to do 30 days and come home. But, I learned all about addiction and alcoholism there, and allowing myself to approach it as an illness, as a disease. It's been, very therapeutic, and it's something that, resonates with me. I was just a strong-willed person that never had very much failures in their life or things that I couldn't achieve on my own, that when he approaches an illness as an allergy, a disease, then that's like, okay, well, I wouldn't treat, a cancer patient, yell at them or be disappointed, etc. It's like, all right, well, I need to like accept myself and then treat myself properly, which is when I was, during part of the process at Costa Rica Recovery was you go to your AA, your NA meetings, etc. And within the first 7 days, you got to get a sponsor and go to all activities so you can leave the house and use the internet. So that was some motivation. I remember the AA group at the zoo group, and I think it was like my 5th day or something, and I kind of like just got up and I walked over to Alejandro, and I don't even think I said anything, but he was like, yes, I'll be your sponsor. And I was like, great. I was like, what's your name again?
Right?
So I started working with him, and I shared my story a lot. I mean, we just did, it's a very, through your other podcast, you kind of described the treatment center, but it's very structured. During that 90 days, I got in the best shape of my life. I kicked all my addictions. I ran a half marathon in rehab, which was, unreal.
Yep.
I started believing the rooms. I mean, I was fake it till you make it. First meeting, remember Paul was at the NA meeting and he was hugging me and giving me my chip. And then 3 months later, I would give him his new 24-hour chip.
Yeah.
And that's what the program is all about. It's like just full circle, things like that. But yeah, I was like, I remember this. I kind of get the program, but I don't get the spiritual side. I'm like, well, that's what the whole fucking program is. So I'm a classic overthinker. Higher power thing had to come to me. There was one kind of aha moment. I was, and maybe you remember him, but Panama Rob, he was at our clinic, and it's like a dual diagnosis clinic. So it does psychosis and addictions treatment. And I think he was more on the psychosis side. And he was so out of his mind when he got there, and he was touching people's stuff and bringing things where he shouldn't, just kind of like all over the place. And he scared me. He scared me. I was starting to see through. I was about 26 days in myself or something. And I'm like, oh God. And then they told me this guy was going to room with me. And I'm just like, oh, like, no, like I've had enough of this. Like, this is it. And I'm outside around the pool at night looking up at the stars in San Jose. And I'm just like, motherfucking the world. And it just occurred to me, like, Chris, damn, like, as much as you fucking be pissed about this, that guy is going to be sleeping in the bunk above you tonight. Like, get the fuck over it. It's out of your control. and then I started to look at it like, this guy was put in my life for a reason to like teach me this. And, that's out of my control and I can't control that. So, why am I wasting the effort? And I took that little bit, I hung on to it for dear life and I kept working it. I started working the steps with my sponsor. I finished my 90-day program. I was doing so well in Costa Rica and was, falling in love with the country and just having such a strong network there of, recovery, I decided I thought it was in my best interest to stay there longer. So I got a little apartment and stayed in Costa Rica and continued doing all the groups for another 6 months. I was able to, I chaired meetings, continued working on my steps. I ghosted my sponsor. So sorry, Alejandro, if you're listening.
I know. He used to tell me, Alejandro's my sponsor too. He's like, have you heard from Chris? He sounds like he's doing good. He looks good.
Yeah, right. So I was getting so healthy. I got so into yoga and just running. And like I said, eating healthy, food, nutrition, whatever, kind of the way I saw exercises were, and still to this day, is where I get a lot of my meditation and, centering myself. It's kind of doing a physical act of treating my body right and doing something that's going to take care of myself just as much as, the meditation and the prayer is healing the inside. This is the way I look at it. So I like combining the two. But I got very, I kind of took it to an extreme. I got egotistical and narcissistic and, lost sight. I kind of thought that like yoga and exercise could keep me sober, but I kept going to the meetings, etc. My time in Costa Rica was up, at the warning of my sponsor. I got in a relationship my first 3 months. It turned out, it was okay. It was cordial. It ended when it had to end. I kind of see, why after the fact they say that. It's because in a relationship, you begin to close down your network and you begin to rely on each other so much. And when you remove that pillar, then it's like, oh, how do I build this up again? And I can't say like when I stop moving, like if I'm not making progress, then I'm going backwards. And it is so hard for me to get that ball moving again. I came back to Connecticut about 7-8 months clean. And I knew the first meeting I was going to when I stepped off the plane. And I found a group and I kind of went through like there's not that many young people, there's old people, whatever. And I got a sponsor. And I went to every noon meeting. I wasn't working at the time. Costa Rica, I was able to get part-time jobs as an English tutor. And actually the clinic hired me. And I think working at Costa Rica Recovery, seeing what I saw in some of the detoxes and kind of like, looking at yourself sitting in that intake chair, but looking at somebody else and just being like, I was just as crazy as you were. But it's a very rewarding experience being able to help people and give back. So I came back home. Man, I had a tough couple months. It got to a point where I was going to meetings every day. I had a sponsor and I was still sitting on my 4-step. And it's like 9 months in. And somebody said something at a meeting. They're like, like if you keep saying that you're going to do something and you're not doing it, you're lying to yourself. And I was so hell-bent on honesty being one of my principles to live by and have integrity in my life that I had kind of blinders on. I was like, I'm being honest with all these other people, but shit, I'm lying to myself. Like, this has been on the list for fucking 9 months now. Like, what's up with that? So all these little things start to click. Like, it works if you work it.
Mm-hmm.
Faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting back waiting for the fucking miracle to happen and not doing shit about it.
Yep.
Like, so I started working my program a lot better. I did the 4-step. I wrote a book, and we went over it. And my sponsor, he's this old guy named Bill, and we have a real good relationship. And I kind of see it almost as like my grandfather, kind of like living vicariously through him. It's very cool. And we meet once a week. We always we get some dinner. And we work on the step work, but went through the 4-step: fear, ego. I'm a very ego-based person. I have a lot of fear, and I protect that with my ego. That's the root of a lot of my flaws. That's what it is. So things are getting better. My sponsor, when I didn't have work here, before I got work here, gave me jobs to do. I've been blessed through the program, and I have a great network today. People that check in with me. I'm working full time now. I'm doing something I never in a million years thought I would have done, hanging out with people. If you had told me these are the people I'm going to hang out with, I like to say, like all this was not part of my 5-year plan, things just don't work out the way I, intend for them to, but I still, progress, not perfection. I just continue to make these lists in my head and like, well, I should have this, and this and accomplish. And this, I get in trouble. I just got to live day to day, because when I get out of that, when I get out of today, when I get out of the moment, I miss all these things. And, I'm done. I'm tired of missing all this shit. I got to be present, because, it's like I could be looking for the girl of my dreams, but if I'm looking everywhere for her, no, I'm not centered today, and she may be walking right by me. So I just live it day by day, man. I believe in the program. It's tough having a father who was in the program now drinks, and you see that. And, we got chapters in our literature that say that doesn't happen, but, different strokes for different folks. I'm a perfectionist. I'm an overthinker. So I just try to dumb it down. I don't think too much, If I have a problem and I can't solve it, I better fucking hope that something greater than myself can. Otherwise, there is no hope. So that was basically how I dumbed down my 3rd step. Like,
yeah,
if I don't believe something greater than myself can fix me, then, I might as well go off the deep end right now. So if it wasn't for my dog those last days and him getting me out of bed, I would have taken the easy way out. But thank God for my dog today. And he's here sleeping while I'm doing this interview. So he's with me. He's one of my higher powers for sure. I think that's all I got to share. Oh, I'm just blabbing on now.
Dude, what a story, man. Like, it's unbelievable that you are alive today.
Yeah, it is crazy.
And it's not the first time I've said these words to someone when I've heard someone share their story. And this pit of despair, this isolation, this self-centered fear, this absolute recoiling into the depths of hell. And it's not the first time I've heard somebody talk about how their dog saved their life, because they cared more about this dog than they cared about themselves.
Yeah, the dog, I talked about it the other night at a meeting. It's like, as much as I isolated, the dog saw it all. And, it was probably just me, but you could see it in his eyes. He was just like, you're better than this. We could be having so much fun together. But, through it all, he loved me unconditionally. And, I live a daily amends to my dog for sure. We take a 1.5 mile hike every day religiously, rain, sleet, snow, etc. Regardless of what that weather is, that dog is so happy. Like, it's a lot of lessons I can learn from my dog.
It reminds me of Fred's story, Fred D. And he talks about his dog that he named Cocaine. And he's on the fucking streets with the dog and just living in absolute misery. And he looks down at the dog and he goes, you know what? The dog doesn't deserve this. The dog doesn't deserve this, man. And he went to his parents and he asked for help. You know, it's just one of those. Yeah, God works in mysterious ways, and we do not listen. You know, we can have the entire world crumbling around us, and it takes something as pure, because it is pure, and this unconditional love that you get from an animal, and it's undescribable. It's in those moments where you say, if for no other reason, you know, he doesn't deserve this.
Yeah. You know, you are their voice. And I think like a lot of addicts, alcoholics, you know, took me a while to accept it, but you know, we're good people. We're just making bad decisions. And, you know, a good person typically doesn't turn their back on an animal. There's something about the innocence that you just, for me, I just couldn't do it anymore. That was a big thing. So
God has to speak to you in the language that you're ready to listen to. Yeah. And it's not going to come from your mother, and it's not going to come from your father, and it's not going to come from your friends. It just, for whatever reason, it just falls on deaf ears. But, you know, it needs to come from a place that, you know, or from an entity that doesn't speak, you know, a power greater than yourself. Definitely. You know, there's no question about it. I believe it. So, wow, Chris, that was just incredible. And again, it's a miracle that you're alive, but the program that you have adopted and the way that you currently work your program and going to a meeting every day for the first year, that's what saved your life, and it's changed your life. And so today you look to find a way to live a life more congruent with spiritual principles. And these are all terms and verbiage and rhetoric that I don't think either you and I ever imagined we'd be saying, you know, in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. You know, the program has taught me a lot about differentiating spirituality and faith from religion. You know, I had such a wall built up against religion in my story that I had to, you know, look at the difference in definitions between that terminology. And I definitely, I'm not sure if I have religion in my life right now. Maybe someday I will. I'm not closed off to that. But, you know, I have faith. I have spirituality. I know there's much greater things, and I see them every day that are forces in my life that are higher than me. And I have multiple higher powers. You know, nature is definitely big for me. But yeah, I believe it, man. I'm sold. I had to fake it until I made it, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, same here, buddy. Same here. All right, well, let's start closing up, Chris, because we've already been on this call for like 2 hours. So, that's a story, man. This might have to be in 2 pieces.
Yeah.
Chris, part 1.
Yeah, it would be like, a long movie, the epilogue. All right.
I love it. All right. So for the newcomer, I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with the newcomers. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Let's do this. Number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Fear and ego.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's usually that's number 1 on most of our lists.
Yeah, you know, a stigma of addiction, and, you know, just not being educated about addiction and alcoholism. I'm a huge advocate about that. I think had I known, or was the preconception of that different, then I might have been more apt to say, hey, maybe that's me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, so then number 2, at what point did you have that spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol for the first time, but had developed the hope that you could recover?
I mean, I described the moment of the kind of the spiritual kind of higher power moment at the pool with my roommate in rehab. That was definitely one. But, you know, just thinking back, or, you know, for me, another big moment was reading the text, the big book, and just, it was like reading my biography. I didn't have to write it. It was already written for me. And, you know, not being able to deny that anymore.
Absolutely. Yes. And it happened to me in the same way when I was working step 1. I was right in the middle of working step 1, and it was talking about manageability, internal and external unmanageability. And I'm going over this with my sponsor, and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I totally get this. And it was one of the first times I'd gotten anything in so long. Like, it clicked, and I went,
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so into this. And I just dove into the steps like right after like I'm fiend. It was fucking awesome. All right. So then, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
Early recovery book. I think I tried to keep my reading light. Can I suggest a non-recovery book? Is that right?
Absolutely.
All right. So the one I read was Steal Like an Artist.
Ooh.
And it's all about the creative process. It's really short, and it's by Austin Kleon. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of helped me decipher some things in recovery and, work around, help me make my own discoveries. I don't know.
Perfect. All right. And then number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Best suggestion is stop digging.
I know this one. I
haven't gone far enough again. Like maybe my hole's not deep enough. It's like, well, stop digging.
I remember that one. How is it exactly that it goes? It goes something like, dude, I totally remember it. It's like, when you realize that you're in too deep.
Yeah.
Stop digging. I think it was something like that. I just remember hearing it and going, dude, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
I get that. And if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
Just if you're doing 12-step program, I'd just say, or whatever you're doing, just don't leave before the miracle happens. I mean, myself, I like everything immediate. I like it to be on my time, but fortunately, that's not the way our world works. So, just write a list of all the things you like to do when you're sober, when you're clean, people you care about. Because if you're an addict, you're an alcoholic like me, you will, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere down the line, you'll lose all that stuff again. So
beautiful. I love it, man. I love it. All right, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story with us, brother.
And my pleasure, man. This was it's a lot of fun. So
it was absolutely. I can't wait to get this out in the airwaves. I know our listeners. Yeah, the listeners are gonna love this one.
Get some sleep. Got to get back to farming tomorrow,
dude. No.
Just gotta feed the people, Omar.
Yeah, no, I hear you. We got to feed the world.
For sure.
Shit, I want to come out and visit you for sure, man. Like for reals. Like that sounds like an amazing place.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. Anytime you're in the Northeast.
I'm in. All right. We have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-step